Hey, ever seen a jellyfish and thought, that's not a jellyfish, that's a glowing jellyfish with a tan line? Well, turns out they've got their own sunscreen, and it's basically a party in their skin. So, how do these underwater party animals make their own SPF? Let's find out. Because nothing says, I'm ready for the beach, like a jellyfish with a tan. So we're talking about jellyfish, right? Like those floppy, glowing, kind of spooky creatures that float around in the ocean. But wait, do they even need sunscreen? Probably not, but they still have some kind of protection. Let's figure that out. Sunscreen is basically stuff you put on your skin to block the sun. But jellyfish don't have skin like we do. They have this gelatinous body, like a big, squishy blob. So how do they protect themselves from the sun? Maybe they have some kind of natural sunscreen in their body. Like, maybe their skin or their tentacles have chemicals that block the sun. But how does that work? And why would they need it? Wait, jellyfish don't even have a brain, right? So they can't think about protecting themselves. But they still manage to survive in the ocean. Maybe the sunscreen is just part of their natural makeup. So the question is, do jellyfish have their own version of sunscreen? And if so, how does it work? Let's try to figure it out. Because even if they don't need it, it's still cool to think about. So, here's the thing. Jellyfish sunscreen is like the ultimate chill pill for the ocean. It's basically their way of saying, I don't need to worry about sunburn. I'm a floating blob of cool. But why should you care? Well, if you love the ocean, you probably want it to keep existing, right? And if you care about weird biology, this is basically the most bizarre skincare routine you've never heard of. Plus, if you're into science, it's like a free tutorial on how nature builds its own sun protection. Imagine your skin getting a free upgrade, but with more jellyfish. And if you're just into weird facts, this is like a tiny alien giving you a thumbs up. Its biology so strange. It's almost funny, like a sci-fi movie that actually exists. So yeah, you should care. Because jellyfish sunscreen is basically the most unapologetic, lazy, and effective way to stay cool. And it's doing it while looking like a blob from a 90s cartoon. Okay, so jellyfish sunscreen isn't actually sunscreen. It's more like a fancy coat of armor. They use a special kind of protein called a nanotoxist, which is basically their version of a laser pointer. It's not for sunbathing, it's for hunting. Now, let's fast forward a few million years. Jellyfish started making this stuff way before we even had dinosaurs. They were like the original beachgoers, slathered in their own glow-in-the-dark stuff. But wait, how did they figure out sunscreen? Well, they didn't really figure it out, they just evolved it. It's like if you accidentally developed a sunburn-resistant skin after a long day in the sun, and then your kids inherited it. So, to sum up, jellyfish sunscreen is basically their natural defense system. It's not for tanning, it's for survival, and they've been doing it for eons, long before we even knew what sunscreen was. And that's the history of jellyfish sunscreen in 40 seconds. No, really, it's like a history of sunscreen, but with more tentacles and less SPF. Next time you see a jellyfish, give it a high five for being a natural sunscreen pioneer. So, jellyfish don't use sunscreen like we do. They make their own, like a fancy slather of goo that stops the sun from zapping their skin. They make this goo with chemicals from the water, basically using the ocean as a chemistry lab. It's like making a smoothie, but with salt and sunlight. This goo acts like a shield, reflecting sunlight like a mirror. But it's not just for looks. It's like a superhero suit made of seawater and sunlight. The best part? They don't even need to reapply. The goo sticks around, protecting them as they float, swim, or just chill in the ocean. So, next time you see a jellyfish, think of them as nature's sunscreen champions. They're basically the cool kids of the sea, with a glow-up that's totally natural. Okay, so first things first, jellyfish aren't exactly sunbathing on a beach. They're more like floating in the ocean, trying to survive without a sunscreen aisle. So, how do they even know they need it? They've got this special kind of skin, like a gelatinous wrapper, and inside that wrapper is basically a chemical factory. It's like their body is made of a giant science experiment. But wait, they don't just make sunscreen randomly. They have a system, like a biological factory line. It starts with some basic ingredients they get from their food or the water around them. Then, they use some kind of chemical wizardry. They take those ingredients and mix them into something that blocks UV rays. It's like making a DIY sunscreen, but with more jellyfish flair. And here's the kicker. They don't just make it once. They keep producing it as they float around, like a continuous sunscreen factory that never sleeps. Because the ocean isn't a beach, and the sun doesn't take a break. Okay, so now the jellyfish has this special goo on its skin. But how does it actually work? Well, the goo is basically a chemical shield. It's like a tiny umbrella made of proteins and pigments. It blocks the sun's bad rays, just like a sunscreen does on your skin. But here's the funny part. The jellyfish doesn't use the same stuff we do. Our sunscreen is oily and sticky. Their version is more like a gel. It's not just about blocking the sun, it's also about reflecting it back. Imagine if your skin had a tiny mirror. And guess what? Some jellyfish even have a layer of tiny, reflective cells. They're like skin glitter, but for protection. It's not just about looking fancy, it's about staying safe from the sun's harsh rays. But wait, it's not just about the goo. The jellyfish also has a special way of moving. They sort of float in the water, never really sitting still. That helps them avoid the sun's heat, which is a bonus. It's like sunbathing but with a side of cleverness. So, putting it all together, the jellyfish's sunscreen is a mix of science, strategy, and a little bit of luck. They have the right chemicals, the right structure, and the right attitude. No sunburn, no stress, just a jellyfish being jellyfish. So here's the real twist. They don't just make sunscreen, they make it out of their own skin. It's like making a hat out of your own head. Weird, but somehow works. They have this special protein called cytomin, which is basically their version of a sunblock. It's like a tiny shield made out of chemicals that don't want to get burned. The sunscreen is actually part of their skin, so it's not just a layer, it's built right in. Like when you grow a sun hat out of your own head, only cooler and more scientifically correct. So they make it, inject it, and then it becomes their skin. It's like sunscreen is their second skin, and honestly, I'm jealous of their skin. So here's the real secret. Jellyfish don't make sunscreen like humans do. They make something called a screen, like a net, but made of chemicals. It's like if your skin was a window and they put a mesh eye to block the sun. This screen is made from a chemical called cytomin. It's not just any sunscreen. It's actually a kind of natural sunblock that's been around for millions of years. Think of it like a superpower from the ocean. Cytomin works by absorbing UV light and turning it into heat. It's like if your skin had a little solar panel that just wanted to warm up instead of burn. Nature's way of saying, sun's nice, but not too nice. The cool part, jellyfish don't have to make this stuff from scratch. They just harvest it from algae and bacteria that live around them. It's like using a store-bought sunscreen instead of making it yourself, way easier. So the real science here is that jellyfish are basically using a natural, ancient sunscreen that's been around since the Cambrian period. It's like they're doing yoga in the sun and getting a tan at the same time. Smart move, jellyfish. So imagine if your skin was a party, and the jellyfish was the guest who shows up with a giant umbrella made of algae and weird chemicals. It's like the best sunscreen you've ever seen, but also the weirdest thing you've ever seen. The jellyfish doesn't buy sunscreen at the store, it makes it from stuff it finds in the ocean, like a DIY skincare influencer who only uses things from the sea. But here's the twist, the sunscreen isn't just for the jellyfish, it also helps other sea creatures, like corals, by making the water a bit more protected. It's like a sunscreen that also gives shade to your neighbor. So in the end, the jellyfish isn't just surviving the sun, it's making its own sunscreen, like a sunbather who also invents SPF. It's a bit weird, but also kinda genius. Quick word from our sponsor. If this sounds like something you enjoy, take a look at the Fire TV Stick 4K streaming device. There's a link and a QR code on screen right now, and in the description below. Alright, back to it. Okay, so here's the thing, jellyfish don't just randomly make sunscreen. They have a special kind of molecule called cytomin that's like their natural SPF. It's kind of like a tiny, glowing sunscreen bubble that floats around in their skin. This molecule isn't just sitting there doing nothing, it's actively working to block UV rays. Think of it like a superhero kit made of light. It's not just pretty, it's protective. But how do they even make this stuff? It's not like they have a factory or a lab. They just make it in their skin, like a built-in sunscreen factory. It's like your skin makes melanin, but jellyfish make cytomin. And the best part? They don't even need to store it. They just make it on demand, like a sunscreen that appears when you need it. It's like your skin makes sunscreen when you're in the sun, but jellyfish do it in the water. So yeah, it sounds like something out of a sci-fi movie, but it's real. Jellyfish are basically sunbathing superstars with a built-in SPF. Kudo. Okay, so the first myth is that jellyfish have a special sunscreen made by them. But here's the thing, they don't make it. They just borrow it from the ocean. You know how you might put on sunscreen before going out? Well, jellyfish don't do that. They just float, and the sun is like their friend, giving them a low tan. So, the real sunscreen is actually made by the algae and plankton in the water. Jellyfish just get a little sun bath and then go about their business. This is like if you tried to make your own sunscreen, but instead you just borrowed aloe vera from your neighbor's garden. So, the myth is busted. Jellyfish don't make sunscreen, they just enjoy the sun. And that's totally fine. Okay, so I thought maybe jellyfish just sit in the sun and get burned, but no. They've got their own sunscreen. Wait, but is that even a thing? Like, do they have a special goo that makes them immune to the sun? Turns out, their sunscreen is actually a layer of protein that acts like a shield. It's not like SPF 50, though, more like SPF 1. But they're so thin they don't even notice the sun. But here's the real kicker, even with this shield, they still get sunburned. It's just that their bodies are so delicate they don't even realize they're burned until they start to glow. So yeah, they do have their own sunscreen, but it's not super effective. They're basically like a sunscreen that forgets to apply. So, the myth that they don't have sunscreen is busted. But the myth that they're immune to the sun? That's still standing. Probably. So, next time you're at the beach, look for the jellyfish. They're basically the sunscreen champions. They've got this whole thing down, like a pro. But here's the kicker. You don't have to be a jellyfish to get the benefits. Just think about the sunscreen you're using. It's basically your skin's version of a jellyfish. So, every time you put on sunscreen, you're not just protecting yourself. You're also giving a tiny jellyfish a tiny job in the sunscreen industry. And if you ever wondered why your sunscreen feels like a weird jellyfish on your skin, now you know. It's not a bug, it's just doing its job. So next time you're in the sun, remember, you're not just a human. You're a jellyfish on a sunscreen mission. Stay safe, and keep that skin smooth. So imagine a jellyfish in a lab, looking like it just got caught with its pants down. Scientists are like, okay, jellyfish, time to be a sunscreen model. They take a tiny sample of its skin, and it's like pulling a shirt off a mannequin, no drama, just science. They put it in a machine that measures how much UV light it blocks. They found out that jellyfish makes a protein called JP, which is like a built-in sunscreen. It's not just a random thing, it's a survival tactic. This protein doesn't just block UV, it also helps the jellyfish stay cool, which is basically the ultimate beach accessory. So the next time you're sunbathing, maybe you should ask yourself, am I as smart as a jellyfish? Probably not, but I'm definitely more fun. So, here's the thing. Some jellyfish are like, I'm not just making sunscreen, I'm making a superhero suit. They've got the special protein that's basically like a tiny, glowing superhero in your skin, protecting you from the sun's wrath. This sunscreen isn't just for them. It's like a gift to the whole ocean, protecting coral and other critters from the sun's bad vibes. And here's the kicker. It all starts with a single cell. One cell, one sunblock, one jellyfish, one sunbather's dream. Okay, so jellyfish make their own sunscreen, but what if they mess it up? Imagine if you tried to make SPF 50 with a crayon and a lemon. It's just not gonna work. When the sunscreen goes wrong, the jellyfish gets sunburned. Not the kind that peels, but the kind that makes it glow like a disco ball in the water. But wait, jellyfish don't have skin like us. So when they burn, it's more like their insides are cooking. It's like if your soup got too hot and started to bubble over. And the worst part? They can't just put on a hat. They're basically a blob in the ocean, so they have to rely on their sunscreen. If it fails, they're basically a sunburned blob. So yeah, sunscreen is super important for jellyfish, but if they mess it up, it's like a party where the sunscreen forgot to come. So here's the catch, and it's not a sunscreen catch, it's a jellyfish catch. They make their own sunscreen, but they also make their own sunburn. The same stuff that protects them from the sun also makes them feel the sun. It's like wearing a t-shirt that tells you, I'm hot, but I'm also keeping you cool. So they're like, I made this sunscreen, but I still need shade. Which is weird because they're basically made of water and jelly. They don't even have skin. So in the end, their sunscreen is like a party that also brings the heat. It's a sunscreen, a stressor, and a little bit of a joke. So how did humans even figure out jellyfish have sunscreen? Well, it's not like they just stood around and asked jellyfish, hey, do you use sunscreen? No, it took a bunch of smart people looking at jellyfish and thinking, wait, why are these things melting in the sun? They must have some kind of sun protection. Scientists use microscopes and lab tests to see what's going on, and they found that jellyfish use something called cytostoma, which is basically their version of a sunscreen factory. So yeah, it took some smart people, a lifetime, and maybe a few burned jellyfish experiments to realize that these creatures have their own natural SPF. And that's how we found out, by being curious and maybe a little bit stubborn. But hey, who doesn't want to know what jellyfish are wearing on a sunny day? So, here's the weird edge case. Jellyfish in the Arctic. They don't need sunscreen because it's too cold for UV light, but they still make it anyway, just in case. It's like bringing an umbrella to a rainstorm and then getting hit by a hurricane. It's like a jellyfish version of just in case. They're not being paranoid, they're being prepared. Evolution doesn't care if you're overprepared, it just wants you to survive. So, they make sunscreen even when it's not needed, just like humans make coffee even when they're not awake. It's a weird, self-sabotaging kind of preparation. It's a reminder that nature doesn't always follow the rules. Sometimes it just does what it wants, even if it doesn't make sense. And that's kind of beautiful in its own weird way. So, in conclusion, jellyfish make sunscreen for the same reason you might bring a tent to a picnic, just in case. And sometimes, that's the best kind of weird. Okay, so what if we took jellyfish sunscreen and made it into a superhero serum? Imagine a world where your skin glows like a jellyfish and never burns. But wait, would that make you look like a radioactive alien or just really tan? What if we use jellyfish sunscreen to make our phones immune to sunlight? No more cracked screens from the beach. But would your phone start to glow like a jellyfish too? What if we made sunscreen from jellyfish and called it Jelly Glow? It'd be the most popular product ever, but would people start mistaking you for a jellyfish at the pool? What if we used jellyfish sunscreen to make our hair never go out of style? It'd be like a natural highlighter, but would your hair start to glow like a jellyfish in the dark? So, what if we took jellyfish sunscreen and made it into something amazing? It could be the future of skincare, or maybe just a weird DIY project. Either way, it's a cool idea, right? So, if you're trying to picture a jellyfish making sunscreen, think of it like a kid trying to make a sun hat out of bubble wrap and glitter. They're not exactly the most stylish, but hey, it works. Jellyfish don't have skin like us, so their sunscreen is more like a coat of paint on the outside. It's not about looking good, it's about staying cool and not getting burned. Quick word from our sponsor. If this sounds like something you'd enjoy, take a look at the Kindle Paperwhite e-reader. There's a link and a QR code on screen right now, and in the description below. Alright, back to it. Human sunscreen is like a fancy suit with SPF, but jellyfish sunscreen is more like a DIY project. It's made of chemicals they make themselves, and it's not always perfect. So, in the end, jellyfish sunscreen is like trying to make a sunshade out of confetti. It's not the most elegant solution, but it works sort of like a kid's sun hat. Before you go, if you enjoyed this, please give it a like and subscribe so you don't
Comment this emoji if you made it to the end.